For most voters, the ballot box is a fixture of the local neighborhood. We cast our votes in schools and community centers, relying on a physical infrastructure that has remained largely unchanged for decades. This localism is rooted in the constitutional framework of states' rights. By design, individual states manage their own elections, which prevents a single federal authority from controlling the logistics of the vote. Because this community-run system feels like a permanent feature of the landscape, we often overlook how fragile that decentralization actually is. Ahead of the 2026 midterms, the Trump administration is using the federal legal apparatus to move away from that local tradition. The administration describes these executive changes as a necessary cleanup of the voter rolls. However, legal experts warn that shifting this much authority to the Department of Justice allows the federal government to influence the mechanics of the democratic process. This shift is being driven by a specific strategy, a three-pronged midterm playbook designed to consolidate federal power over the ballot box. Deciphering the intent behind this playbook is essential for 2026. The policies being implemented now will determine how votes are collected and verified in every precinct in the country. The first step in the playbook involves a move to extract personal voter data from individual states and bring it under federal management. This includes demanding private data from states that have already certified their election results, bypassing the usual verification protocols handled at the state level. Traditionally, your information is protected in 50 separate state databases. This strategy pulls that data into a single federal hub. By amassing this data, the government runs large-scale algorithms to model voter behavior across state lines, identifying how specific groups cast their ballots. Centralizing this data is the prerequisite for the next step, targeting the physical ways people actually cast their ballots. The second tactic focuses on the mailbox. By setting new federal parameters for how election mail is routed and marked, the administration can regulate the flow of mail-in ballots from the top down. These federal mandates are designed to take precedence over state-level absentee laws, creating a new layer of requirements that local ballots must meet to be considered valid. When federal rules conflict with local counting procedures, technical discrepancies lead to the mass rejection of votes in the problem ballots bin. This restriction on physical access relies on the data from step 1. By knowing which regions rely most on the mail, the administration can apply these technical filters where they will have the most significant impact on the count. The third tactic involves applying direct federal pressure to the local officials who certify the results. This oversight limits the independence of local workers. Instead of following community-led guidelines, these officials must now operate under the direct scrutiny of federal investigators. Legal analysts argue that this level of coercion breaks with a century of precedent that kept the federal government out of the local certification room. By controlling the voter data, restricting physical access points, and overseeing the local officials, the central authority moves the final power over the election outcome from the state to the federal level. These changes create a new, long-term framework for American elections that persists beyond any single voting cycle. If this architecture remains in place, the final authority over election logistics shifts from thousands of local jurisdictions to a centralized office in Washington, D.C. This centralization allows the party in power to use federal data modeling and administrative rules to influence the legislative balance of Congress in future midterms. The primary conflict in the 2026 midterms is centered on the legal framework governing the paper ballot itself, rather than the candidates whose names are printed on it. Understanding the difference between local rules and federal mandates is now a requirement for every voter. To track how these policies are changing the democratic infrastructure, hit the subscribe button. We're here to keep you ahead of the narrative.